an interesting thing because the market we're in, it's natural disasters are happening more frequently, and I hate saying that that's good for business, but at the same time, if they are happening, people need the tools.
When builders build to code, they're basically building to minimum wage.
The more information we can give on an individual property level, which is what a lot of carriers are moving towards anyways, the better off the industry becomes from like a pure, efficiency cycle standpoint. This is your risk. These are your most potent risk factors. Here's all the action items that you could be using to improve the risk of your property. And then here are products, services, and resources in your area that help you get to that next step. Floods can be happening in areas, but if you're elevated above a certain level, or you have these fences and you have these like mitigation measures in place, that not only protects, in most cases, like your most valuable asset, but from like an insurance lens, you're also giving a company a way to say, okay, this is protecting our investment in this policy. We would be okay with insuring you.
Insurance agents don't really take their education seriously once we get our license.
For the policyholder, we have a score that's 0 to 100. If I say that your property is a 60 on our score, and I tell you 100 is the best, the most resilient structure your property could possibly be, then that gives you a pretty good estimate of, okay, my score is a 60 out of 100, probably in that like mid-range area, could be better, but it's not in the worst category, right? So that immediately starts to paint the picture.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. And one of the ways we do that is by bringing you tools and exposing you to them, things that'll help you at the point of sale with your clients, with your prospects. And today, not only do I have my right hand back with me after a bit of a hiatus, I feel like it's been kind of hit or miss for about, honestly, like the last year or so, but I think we finally got a good schedule here, and we're going to be able to have the Houck Master back with us every week. Yeah. But we're also joined by Valkyrie Holmes, who's the CEO and co-founder of Fora, a really interesting company that we just, I always ask a few questions right before we start recording so I can get my head around who I'm talking to and what questions I'll ask. And I think it's interesting, man. I don't think a lot of people really know how podcasts go most of the time, right? Like you've probably got people that are out there that will sit down and prepare ahead of time and study and know all of this stuff. I don't do that. I feel like, number one, it helps me as a producer by keeping my question asking skills sharp on the fly. And honestly, I don't want to can anything, man. I don't want it to be pre-planned. I want the conversation to go where it may, and we'll figure out things as we go along. And so we started talking before I hit the record button, and, I had all kinds of stuff that was already brewing in my head. So I'm really excited to get this episode out to everybody, because what we were talking about and what I think you'll find from this podcast is that it's it's going to be something that's kind of the wave of the future that's already here, even though, we say wave of the future type stuff. So before we get cranked up, Valkyrie, why don't you give everybody a little bit of a information about your background, who you are, where you came from, how you got to where you're at today, and then we'll just jump into Fora right out of the box.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. First off, thank you guys for having me. You'll find, I think, pretty quickly that I could talk about this for many, many hours. So I'll try to keep it toned down as much as possible. But yeah, my name is Valkyrie Holmes, and I started Fora with my co-founder, Amanda Southworth, about almost 3.5 years ago now. My background is in data science, so I spent my early career with the NASA Seeds Institute monitoring satellites in low Earth orbit, and then I moved over to SpaceX.
A little bit of light stuff that you were doing there.
Yeah,
right?
It's the part of my life that I really deeply admire, and now that I'm on to startup stuff, it just feels like
after a brief stint with Elon Musk at SpaceX.
Oh yeah, no, it was a very interesting time for sure. But yeah, most of my early career was there, and then I got a grant to pursue climate research full time, and this company kind of spun out of the first few years of research there, partnering with people on the ground that were doing local inspections for insurance companies, working in communities to help people understand natural disaster risk, and ultimately kind of, moving into what we do today. So everything we do focuses on property survivability. So in areas that are being experienced as hard to place markets or very low affordability type markets, we're seeing that there are a lot of properties that, if you look at the building characteristics and different modifiers, are much more likely to withstand the effects of a disaster. And that means a couple different things. For an insurance company, that means, okay, this is business that we wouldn't have thought about placing otherwise, but now we can place because we have more confidence that this is a profitable, policy for us. But then also on the, broker side, we're looking at the people that are trying to, find business for their clients. And ultimately, I think I said this before we even started recording, if you can't explain the risk, then you can't justify the price. And so if we can give people more tools to say this property is more survivable, can withstand these factors, is a good risk, then we've already seen that kind of manifesting in being able to kind of spot those business opportunities.
So I need to connect you. You may have heard of this guy before, but I had a guy come on probably a month and a half ago. We recorded like 3 months ago, but there's always a delay in publishing. His name's Aris Papadopoulos, and fantastic name to spell multiple times as I was putting the marketing stuff together.
He sounds Hispanic.
This guy was fantastic. It was actually a really, really interesting interview because his whole thing is on resiliency, and like that's the mountain he's going to die on. And he's all about construction codes. I mean, basically everything that you're talking about. And he's based down in Miami. We're, just for your edification, we're in Tampa. So like we eat, sleep, and breathe catastrophes literally every day almost. But it was interesting to me. One of the comments that he made, and this guy tours all over the place speaking, and he had a book, at least one book that has come out recently. But he said when builders build to code, they're basically building to minimum wage.
Yeah.
He said, and he said, think about it through that lens. He said, code is the least you have to be able to build something to get by. And it's no different than paying somebody minimum wage. It's the least you pay them to have them show up for work. And, we were talking about it because we're in an interesting spot here in Tampa specifically. Kyle lives in a much newer home than I do. My house was built in the early 80s. So everything that we have done to improve its resiliency has been out of pocket on our end. We've had to completely replace the roofing system, completely replace windows, doors, garage door, all of that stuff. We have water monitors.
Dude, all those houses that were built like in the 80s, like that, like my parents' house, it was probably built in the 80s, but like they replaced the windows too. They were just those little thin,
yes,
like I mean, it would rattle like if a car pulled up. And it blows my mind because like obviously we're in Florida, but this area hasn't been hit by anything like substantial other than last year in 150 years, like directly.
But occasionally we'll get something like what Largo got yesterday, just a random tornado spawns off a thunderstorm and touches down or whatever. Yeah, but it's interesting because my first thought always comes to, we have these little thin single pane windows. My house was built in 1981, but the windows are still here. Like how did they even survive? And I mean, from my standpoint, the coolest part for us about upgrading that stuff was just the insulation. It keeps the house cooler, but it also insulates all the noise out. Like you could have a marching band in my front yard and I would have no clue. So anyhow, I think interesting background. I want to get into the meat of what Fora is doing though, because I think, what we just briefly touched on is really interesting and relevant. And I think one of the things that, has happened, let me be clear about something first. I'm going to go ahead and make a comment. I'm sure people are going to get pissed off and that's fine, but they should. And the only person who can fix what I'm about to say is them, not me. Insurance agents don't really take their education seriously once we get our license, right? Like some people will go out and get designations. Some people, get their continuing ed and take it seriously. But if I were to go across the lion's share of the Facebook groups, at least 2 or 3 times a day, somebody's posting, hey, where can I go get my continuing ed as quick as I can? And where I'm headed with that is they're the same people bitching about the fact that people want to leave them because they don't understand why rates are going up and everything else, yet there's no real story for them to tell or any explanation that can do that. And I mean, we're in the hardest market that most people that are in the industry today have ever seen. I mean, I've been through, this is my second fair. I mean, this is worse than the first one I went through, but I feel like in Florida, it's every 10 to 12 years. It's just gonna happen based on storm patterns. But for a lot of people in other parts of the country, we're seeing a hard market across multiple lines of business that they've never seen before. And I think that their inability to retain accounts and have these conversations is a direct reflection of the fact they lack the tools and education necessary to do that. And I mean, it could even be something, and I don't want to discount this because reinsurance is not a simple concept, but it kind of is if you know how to break it down to a 6th grade reading level. And if you don't, put it into Chat GPT, how you would explain it to somebody else and ask it to break it down for you. And then you can. But people will know and they will understand this stuff and it will begin to make some level of sense to them. In the last 2 years, one of the highest engaged Facebook posts that I've done was just a random post I did where I did exactly what I said. I went in and I typed in how reinsurance works and then asked ChatGPT to break it down to a 6th grade reading level and turn it into a Facebook post. And I put it out and my people are like, I had no idea. I didn't know this happened. I didn't know how this worked. I had no idea this is affecting my rates because most people live in a silo. Well, I didn't have any claims, or we didn't have any storms in our area, and they'll give you all these examples, but they don't really understand the pricing model and where it comes from. So when you have tools in place that can kind of characterize or maybe even put some color around why a rate might be what it is, that's weaponry agents need. Like we need that in the marketplace because, even though we can use broad strokes, having individual risk characteristics and reasoning behind it is always the best. And I'd like to think most people, if they're built to minimum wage, to rip off Aris, they don't want to live in a minimum wage house. They want to be able to improve it, but there's got to be a cost benefit analysis done too to make it make sense. So do what you will with that. That was a lot of random stuff that I just said.
No, I mean, I think it's all really potent because, we hear in the just like tech industry a lot of equivalents to something like a FICO score for whether it be like risk analytics or some kind of like platform that automates more tools or whatever it might be. So the problem with using that analogy is that for the most part, it's used within the context of something like pricing or risk analysis that doesn't get put in front of the policyholder or the agent. And so if we're using a FICO score, that would be like someone like using this FICO score and the consumer has no idea how it was designed, no ability to change their score because they don't even know what that score is. And banks using the scoring system to assess your finances without you having any idea when you're applying like something for a mortgage. So I think the concept that we originally came to was, okay, let's take this industry that's clearly experiencing a lot of losses, a lot of, trouble with not only, like maybe analyzing the risk of their properties, but just like finding things to do for these properties, finding exposure data in general. And then let's make it as easily understandable as possible for every party. So for the policyholder, we have a score that's 0 to 100. If I say that your property is a 60 on our score, and I tell you 100 is the best, the most resilient structure your property could possibly be, then that gives you a pretty good estimate of, okay, my score is a 60 out of 100, probably in that like mid-range area, could be better, but it's not in the worst category, right? So that immediately starts to paint the picture. But then we start to get more granular, and you can now know, okay, all you need to do is just ping Fora with an address, and we can tell you the biggest problem on this property is going to be in the foundation, in these elements because of XYZ reason. And the carriers are already seeing things like that, and they're quantifying it in their way. And now we're taking that and making it easily accessible for producers. So I think from the lens of giving people tools to help them make better decisions and then adapting to the current market that we're in, it is an extremely tough market, and we're already starting to see people take the like softening of the reinsurance market and the extra capacity much more seriously. So companies that had exited markets previously are now starting to re-enter. And even, specifically in places like Florida, where we have all these like private insurers now taking plans off of citizens or taking policies off of citizens to expand their own books. And that's a ton of exposure right there, right? So there's a bunch of different like, nuggets in there. But at the end of the day, it comes down to making it actionable for people to not only understand their risk, but reduce their risk, which ultimately helps people just understand how like what that ROI looks like from a reporting to actually like placing business standpoint.
Well, I mean, I've got to believe that this is a godsend for the hedge fund people that are the ones that are dumping the money into the citizens carve out stuff down here. I mean, that's always part of the cycle for us in Florida is you write, storm comes, then carriers get off, people get pushed to citizens, and then they're there for 2, 3, maybe 4 years at the most. Then somebody starts to dip their toe in the water, and then once one comes in, boom, everybody's coming in because they don't want somebody to get the drop on the opportunity. But I feel like a lot of the times in the past, I should say, and I want to be clear, I feel like this. I don't know this because I don't rub elbows with these guys or ask them their strategy by any stretch. But I think to some degree they're probably flying blind. Like they haven't. There's no way they've been using the types of analytics that you're talking about in the historical hard markets that we've had. They're probably looking at zip
No,
codes
yeah.
and saying, "Hey, this probably looks like it could be the worst case scenario here." And maybe there's some kind of I'm sure there's some sort of modeling, but I mean, with the technology that we have now, you can get it down to individual properties and people should be able to self-select what they do and don't want to pull out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, most people are definitely still quoting with kind of like surface level data, but I don't fault a lot of people for that because it's only in the last like, decade or so where we really had to get as granular as now we need to be able to place business. Like it's only in the last 10 years we've experienced 5 times the natural disaster activity, across as far as the 1980s. We're every year these events, 100-year flood events don't mean that there's like a big event that happens every 100 years. It's like a percentage every year. And that percentage just keeps going up and up and up on the probability of there being an event. So honestly, like we look at that and we say it makes sense that we haven't needed to think about this. It's definitely a very different way of approaching the market, but I do think giving agents like visibility into how carriers that have huge risk management teams and are investing a ton into more advanced models, more stricter rules to be able to, find areas to ensure you guys, we don't have that visibility, right? So the more information we can give on an individual property level, which is what a lot of carriers are moving towards anyways, the better off the industry becomes from like a pure, efficiency cycle standpoint, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. And as you're talking, one of the things that's running through my mind is the wealthy, right? People who have multi-million-dollar homes, they understand how numbers work. I can see them like probably not the most scalable method for your product, but I could see the people that are high net worth taking a look at what your software tells them and making decisions as to whether or not they want to invest in making their homes more resilient or whatever and self-insuring as opposed to going out and paying exorbitant insurance rates. And I can tell you, like, I don't know how much of this Kyle has seen. I think probably to a certain degree he's seen some too. I'm more over at the nerve center of what we do. So I get, hear all the call-ins and stuff that we have. And there's an abnormally large number of people living in multi-million-dollar homes that choose to buy no insurance whatsoever right now.
Yeah.
And that's not I don't look, these people have far more money than I do. So I don't want to insult them and say it's an uneducated risk. An uneducated risk that they're taking. I don't think that it's wholly uneducated. I think that it's been thought through, but I don't know that they have the average person doesn't have the data to make that decision the way that it's going to work out best for them. And I could see them very much saying, you know what, I'd be happy to pay somebody to come in and do a report for me, and I don't want to minimize your product. Okay. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Completely different. but have somebody come in, tell me where my exposures are, tell me what I could do to make my property better and less likely to have a major event. And if at a bare minimum, it'll help them to decide, you know what, I'm good. I think I'll take $100,000 deductible and not care about it. I'll still insure against the catastrophic, but the rest of this stuff's okay.
Hmm.
I could definitely see that, because that's a trend that honestly I did not expect. I did not expect to see. I can usually the people with
I
money will call and complain, and that's it. But
right.
they'll still end up buying insurance to cover their home. Now they're just like, yeah, screw it. This is too much. I'll just go
And there's
bare.
a lot of people that are doing that down in like where my uncle lives in Port like Punta Gorda and
Yeah,
that area, because like that right up the harbor there has just
we've
been
gotten hammered
mass
how many times, man?
several times. His house
Mhm.
flooded twice, and he's like he's not like in that percentage that you're talking about, but his house is literally, it's on the harbor there. And so I mean, it flooded probably, I don't know, 6 feet or so on now the bottom level though is just all, there's like the garage there, and there was like a room, but there's nothing there basically,
Would
of
have like
any.
knockout walls in it, so the water just flowed through.
Yeah, and I mean, so like he was able to redo all that. He's like, dude, I'm not gonna, spend 20 grand on insurance when it cost me, you know, $7,000 to redo everything, and
Yeah.
have it hit and have a claim and all this stuff. And like, I think in certain areas, people have like a different mindset on it versus like, somebody who has a similar home, up in Pasco, or even parts of Pinellas that are a little bit more inland where that risk isn't as high. I think that is a huge part of it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that we saw that was interesting this time, Valkyrie, was that there's a company that manufactures these fences to keep water out. And
Mm.
so when the hurricane came, when the hurricanes were coming in, we dealt with Debbie first, and that really was just a lot of water for us. That wasn't
Debbie.
terrible. It was much worse for the Big Bend area. Then we had Helene and Milton, whichever order they came in. But Tampa General is like a top tier trauma center. It's the number one of the top transplant hospitals in the country. It's pretty massive, but it sits over on Davis Island.
Right on the bay.
Yeah,
That
right
was
on the
that
bay.
place was that place was for sure underwater. Like I saw video of the hallways, on whatever first floor, I guess, that was, the water's up above, the kind of like halfway on the window of like doors.
Yeah, and so this
Mm.
year, what they did was they had this fence, this I don't know, flood proofing fence, for lack of a better term, that essentially went around the perimeter, and I think it went like 15 feet high, and
Yeah.
it kept the water when we got the storm surge and everything, it kept it from coming in. And so that company actually has relocated their headquarters to Tampa now, because they got all kinds of publicity for it. But even things like that, you look at it, it's like, man, that was probably pretty expensive. Well, I don't know, how expensive would it be for the entire hospital to be down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think when I think about like the traditional tools, even like when you're buying a house, there's some people now, and there's progress in areas, things like Zillow incorporating climate risk scores into their listings, and when you're now people are starting to ask more of those questions when they know they're
Yep.
on the coast or in a wildfire prone area. But the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that's just the likelihood that a disaster will happen there. That's not the likelihood that your property will be able to withstand any of that. So, like, again, floods can be happening in areas, but if you're elevated above a certain level, or you have these fences and you have these like mitigation measures in place, that not only protects, in most cases, like your most valuable asset, but from like an insurance lens, you're also giving a company a way to say, okay, this is protecting our investment in this policy. We would be okay with insuring you at a lower premium, or like with whatever measures in place, as long as these things are maintained. And that's what we've started to see automatically, is there's like 8 times the amount of regulation now across the country that has to like mandate specific mitigation activity. There's tons of like grants involved with people doing retrofits on their properties. So more and more people are thinking about it and trying to find incentives for people to do it. But for us, like the reason why we're in insurance is because in the majority of cases, everyone relies on it. Like you have to have insurance to have a mortgage, to have a home. And if we can get people to understand that, hey, these two things coincide with an increase or decrease in risk and price, then ultimately, like that's where the insurance industry is heading anyways. We just need to have more transparency on the ground for people that are directly interacting with the people that are living in these homes, the people that are directly impacted when these disasters happen, and from our perspective are most impacted when a disaster happens. So yeah.
So, I mean, you've mentioned hurricanes, wildfires, and all that a few times. I've always said I would much rather deal with a hurricane than wildfires any day of the week because
They're more predictable-ish.
yeah, we know we
We know it's coming and it's going to be somewhere around. We like, I mean, the wildfire can spread like instantly, and it's on you, and then you're then you're
just
like
don't know how to
tornadoes.
even
Like
prepare your property for
right.
it. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like at
yeah.
least with hurricanes, they give you sandbags and you could board up your windows.
It's water and wind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing about that is you'd be surprised how many properties can do mitigation work that's like, takes a couple hours on a Sunday afternoon that
You took the bait.
protects.
You did exactly what I wanted you to do. This is where we were going with this. Thank you.
No, yeah. I mean, we've done a ton of studies, thousands of disasters across the country, including, hundreds of different wildfire events. And there's instances of properties in the same community right next to each other. One has, a 20-point higher score because they have a little bit more defensible space. They have like vegetation that they've cleared off their property, and then maybe they have ember resistant screening over their vents, right? So like those are things that a lot of people can do. Like vents that are like ember resistant, or the screening is like maybe 30 to 40 bucks for a screen on an exterior vent. And those properties that do that work are saved, like directly related to the properties that are right next to them that are also in an extremely high risk wildfire zone.
So I've got a question about that real quick. Sorry to interrupt you, but like in Florida, we've got the wind mitigation stuff, and you can do those sort of things. I'm not super familiar with the fire, preventive measures and all of that, but it sounds like there's a lot of them. Is that something where you have somebody come out and inspect, and like these things are noted that they're in place, and then the agent can just take it back to the carrier and be like, hey, look, you guys came back with this rate, but here's all the things that they've done in order to, is that kind of where you're going with that?
Yeah, and we already have tools that kind of build that out. So the first thing is you just ping us with an address, and then we give you the overview based off of a few hundred characteristics on a property of approximately where this lies on this like risk index. So you already have an idea when you go to this property that, okay, it's in this low risk, medium risk, high risk category. And then from there, we have basically like a digital inspection workflow where you answer a few questions, you walk around, you take some pictures and videos, and then that's where we're really quantifying, getting into the nitty gritty of how this property would survive if a disaster did come in contact. Mm-hmm. And at the end, both parties, both like the policyholder and the agent, get this report that says, this is your risk. These are your most potent risk factors. Here's all the action items that you could be using to improve the risk of your property. And then here are products, services, and resources in your area that help you get to that next step. So it's really meant to streamline the process, not only in understanding that, but to say, okay, maybe I want to do these 3 action items. It's going to cost me around this much. It takes about, 3 to 4 hours of my time, or if I hire a contractor to do it, here are the people that are top rated in my zip code, so on and so forth. So now as a policyholder, I look at that. I know, homeowners, we have our own lives and we're busy, and we might not want to like think about, okay, I have to like remove debris from my property and upgrade my windows. But if we make it as easy as possible for people to do those things and directly see the ROI, the benefit in their insurance price, or even qualifying for insurance in an area they wouldn't have qualified for previously, then that's really where we get the most outsized effort and impact that makes it easier for people to place in that area.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about is you could actually monetize that too if you haven't. You know, here's the things you can do, and oh, by the way, here's a list of the people that can do that in your area. And then I would have affiliate marketing deals with each one of them, so that if you originated the lead, you could bring in some coin for it. So that's a cool thing too, and I think it helps. Again, not to be controversial with what I say, but I feel like when you do have disasters, it breeds bad people too that show up to your area. So having a trusted resource to do things the right way is really invaluable to homeowners. I mean, down here, when the hurricane comes, my God, the week after it, everybody that had a pickup truck within an 800-mile radius is down here with their buddy, a half rack of Pabst Blue Ribbon and a chainsaw ready to
Chainsaws,
clean
yeah,
your yard up,
Yeah.
yeah.
and that can't work. But the proactive stuff, I think, and having pre-qualified people that can do this, that have proven that they're going to do the job the right way, is another valuable tool to the end user.
Yeah. No, I mean, exactly. And I think the biggest thing that we want to get across here is that it doesn't have to be, okay, I can't qualify for insurance in this area, and then that's it. Like, there's nothing I can do. Because in reality, there are a lot of things that we can do on our properties that are not that expensive, or just like give us visibility into why our score is a certain way. And we consistently see insurance companies wanting to have more of that kind of like relationship with their policyholder. And in some cases, they want that to come from the agent, to make more education upfront. And in some cases, it's providing policyholders with more things that they can do to appeal their process or whatever, like if they make improvements, reporting those improvements so that they can get discounts, and sometimes that's mandated by the state. So there's a bunch of things that we can kind of like think about there. But at the end of the day, the more people that understand their risk and what they can do, the better that is for everyone.
So we talked a lot about the homeowner side and residential and everything like that. Is there an opportunity with commercial buildings as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, and especially for commercial structures, there's so much to lose on those
Yeah.
properties. And there's a lot of like really interesting kind of like insurance products that are popping up to account for business interruption. There's this company called Adaptive that just recently launched that does parametric insurance policies for the grid. So if storm comes and you lose power for an hour to 6 hours, I forget what the exact number is, and that interrupts your business to a certain extent. If they can sense that on the grid from their algorithm that they put out, then you just automatically get that payout. Because there's a lot that can happen in a very short period of time that needs to be customized to the business, that the other policies that are more traditional might not cover. And so because every property is different from like a mid-size to like large commercial structure perspective, we need to be able to customize it, give people more personalized plans. It's no longer enough to just like have on our websites, here's things that you can do to prepare your business for a storm, because that doesn't apply to every business. So immediately you rule out a ton of potential value there, by making it so general. And we focused kind of historically on like personal property, small business, and then kind of commercial hab. So apartments, condos, townhomes, things like that.
And is it like regional, or can you pretty much do this wherever?
Yeah, we're nationwide. So
Okay.
we've done thousands of assessments at this point in pretty much every state.
Got it.
So here's my question: what made you come up with this idea?
Yeah, yeah.
So the reason I ask is, was there something, obviously, your training probably had your wheels spinning, and your work history had your wheels spinning for a lot of stuff. But I also find that a lot of people that have entrepreneurial journeys come up with their idea because of other things that were personal that happened to them or a family member or whatever else. And I'm not trying to paint you into a box by any stretch. I'm just interested though. Something had to spark in your mind that you said, you know what? I think I'm going to take this thing and run with it. And I'm going to sell out to it, as a matter of fact, and make sure it gets to market. What
Yeah.
happened that made that happen?
Yeah, no, I mean, so when I was back in school, I did this kind of like hackathon that was surrounding moonshot technology. So what's something that doesn't exist right now, but could in the next 3 to 5 years that solves some big global problem? And the team that I was working with at the time had brought up this concept of doing something on wildfire suppression. And in my head, this was like, I don't know, like 7 or 8 years ago now. I was thinking, wildfire, we have this under control. Like,
Ah,
not experiencing, like this happens maybe every once in a while. What is what are we doing, basically?
and hold on, where were you living at the time?
I was in Las Vegas.
Oh
So
wow,
I was
so you were relatively
born
you
and
were
raised.
relatively close, yeah.
Yeah. I have family in California. So and
Okay.
and even so, right? Like we never heard about it was not on the news as frequently as it is. We weren't hearing about wildfire risk.
That's its
Um
own crazy thing, by the way. It blows my
yeah,
mind how you
yeah.
can be in one part of the country and natural disasters going on in another part of the country, and it's not on the news or anything. Last summer,
No.
when one of the two hurricanes was coming, I had been in Kansas City for a long weekend, or not a long weekend, for a board meeting, and I flew home early that morning because my God, if you've ever flown out of Kansas City to get anywhere, you have to be at the airport at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning to get the best
Mm.
flights out. Um, and I landed, drove home, stopped at Costco on the way home to pick up some stuff that I had told my wife I was going to get for dinner. And as I pull in, they're like lined out to the main road for gas. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? Is Costco giving gas away? And she's like, have you not heard? There's a named storm in the getting ready to come into the Gulf. And I'm like, no, that apparently doesn't make the news in Kansas City. I feel like we hear about the wildfires and stuff more
Yeah, I was gonna
here.
say I see that on the news a lot.
Well,
People,
now
people are like the
definitely.
people in
Yeah.
the rest of the country's like, yeah, Florida's a bunch of lunatics. They'll figure out the hurricane. They'll be out there in their, lawn chairs, just hanging
Just
out, taking
wrestling,
it to
yeah,
the.
wrestling gators and juggling fireworks.
Yeah.
I will say though, the only state that I've ever heard of trying to shoot at a hurricane has been in Florida.
That
So
wouldn't
I do
surprise
have to
me.
say,
So it has
I've
anybody
seen
proven that doesn't work?
that.
So
We need to dig into that.
Listen, we don't need to get into
Next
like all
company
of
idea.
there's plenty of people down here that are gonna that would go off onto the tangent about cloud seeding and everything else too. Trust me. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's pretty it can get left to center in a hurry down here. But I didn't want to hijack. You were talking about where you were at the
No, yeah,
time and how you
yeah.
came up with your idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, so like at the time, it was not nearly as blown up as now it is, and as frequent as it is. So I kind of sat down and was like, guys, I don't think this is not a problem that we're still going to be experiencing. And then we started doing the research, and the more that you dig into all of the different like population increases and wildfire science, you start to realize, okay, we've had massive population increases in very highly forested areas. And at the end of the day, wildfire is healthy for a forest. It's very common that forests were patchy because wildfires would just naturally spawn and clear out all the dead vegetation and make it much healthier, bigger biodiversity, etc. So wildfires are natural, but now we've increased population in these areas, which also means because we've grown so rapidly, we've had to build very rapidly, which typically means pretty cheap materials, not very well built homes. So you start to put all the pieces together, and then I realized, oh crap, like we have a property infrastructure problem in these very highly populated areas, and the biggest barriers to entry here are cost and education. People don't know what their risk is, and if they do know what their risk is, we need to find money from somewhere to help us retrofit these properties, especially with natural disasters like continuing to to increase in their frequency. So this whole kind of like, it was a month-long competition, but it really sparked the interest for me to kind of like pursue it on the side of my just like regular career. And then when I got the opportunity to pursue it full time, it spun into a ton of different natural disaster risk. And now Fora does, 5 different disasters, where like wildfire, hurricane, hail, flood, and earthquake. So we cover the wide spectrum of perils in the US.
It's like the
And
infinity gauntlet of perils that you cover
no,
over there.
yeah, yeah, and it's obviously I'm biased, but I think it's a necessary tool for the market. And my co-founder, she grew up in Southern California. The recent LA wildfires came within a mile of her childhood home, and she says she's very familiar. Every state that she's ever lived in on the West Coast has been impacted by a wildfire at some point where she's lived. So she definitely breathes a lot of this just like upfront risk. And she always says, regardless of whether it's Fora or some other, company tool, this has to exist in some capacity. So yeah, I mean, just kind of like initial interest, and then probably like one of the things that I just got really obsessed with from a world problem standpoint, I would say.
So, what would you say is the most interesting for you to deal with?
Like natural disaster wise,
Yeah,
or
from the 5 things that you guys are looking at now, what do you think? Like, I don't want to say favorite because that sounds really not
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Oh, my
Um,
favorite natural disaster
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
yeah. No, it's always like an interesting thing because the market we're in, it's natural disasters are happening more frequently, and I hate saying that that's good for business, but at the same time, it's if they are happening,
Yeah, I
people
mean,
need the
because
tools.
again, because to what Kyle said and what I said before, hurricanes suck, but you can kind of prepare for it a week. I mean, there are things you can do well ahead
Mhm.
of time, but even when the storm's named, but I mean,
It's
I
got to be
think
earthquakes. Can we just say
I
that?
was I was just gonna say I think earthquakes would probably freak me out the absolute
They're
most.
completely unpredictable. They happen and it's massive disaster. And it's like, I mean, you know that there's a fire going on and that it may spread somewhere. You know that a hurricane's coming. You know that conditions are sort of right for a tornado and,
Mhm.
flood or whatever. I get flash floods and everything, but it's raining. Like if you're in an area, like earthquakes they just happen. And it's like massive
I
devastation.
would literally be clutching to my mattress or something, hoping for the best. I've never been in
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I've never even felt
I
tremors.
don't want to ever.
Something to think about that it kind of is like same thing, along the lines of earthquake is with something like hail, that's like one of the most frequently paid out claims in the
Mm.
industry. And you typically don't know it's going to happen until, maybe half an hour before. And even if the conditions are right for hail, that doesn't really mean much. Like
It
hail
hailed
will
here the other day,
happen.
over in Pinellas at my
Yeah.
brother's house. He was just like, "Dude, it's hailing right now." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, it's like 85 degrees and it's hailing.
Yeah,
It's just kind of ridiculous. So that honestly, especially recently, has been something that is very interesting to us is because hail, even though it causes so many claims and so much damage on a regular basis, it's short, and you can't really predict it very well, and it's very hard to kind of like quantify survivability if you're not looking at every different kind of like part of the structure and what hail has happened there frequently. So that has been like a recent addition to our suite that I find to be the most interesting, not just from like a survivability lens, but just from like what do you do to prepare for an area that is very like hail prone. And I don't think insurance companies have cracked that yet. Like a lot of it is still very focused on the roof.
just wrap your
Uh,
house in rubber.
but yeah, one of those like gray, like rubber things. What is it like the
Yeah,
steel? That's
yeah.
that's what we need on all of our properties.
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, you start to analyze building materials and, art, like, how much has it really changed? You know what I mean? Like, have cinder blocks changed that much in the last 40 years? Has plywood and 2x4s changed that much? And if you look at other parts of the world, they're building houses out of all kinds of stuff. We also are building houses with 3D printers now with material that is
Yeah.
it's far more sustainable and far more resilient. I think one of the most interesting repurposing things that I've ever dealt with, or learned about, there's a chain of chain of furniture stores down here that I wrote the insurance for years ago at another agency when I was there. And one of the things that, if you've never dealt with a furniture operation before, especially at the distribution center, when they get their shipments in, there's just a ridiculous amount of styrofoam. And these guys, man, I swear to God, they would make $2 out of $1 every time. Like it's just incredible. They found every ounce of efficiency that they could in their operation, and basically they did an analysis, and one of their larger expenses was having the compactor pulled, because you can only crush cardboard to a certain level, and then you just can't, or not cardboard, but styrofoam to a certain level, and you can't crush it anymore. So they had bought this machine from a guy that was a conveyor belt, and you put the styrofoam on it, and it had these chompers at the top, and it broke it up more. It ran it through a heating element, melted it down, and it put out this massive disc that was probably 18 inches to 2 feet in diameter. It looked like a massive cow patty, to be honest with you, but it was huge. And they would get these, and they were heavy. And so but it would take massive amounts of cardboard or styrofoam and turn them into these discs. And I'm like, this is insane. He goes, yeah, we paid X number of dollars in cash for the machine, and the payback period was whatever it was. He goes, and then the other portion of the cost of the machine, we get a credit back because this guy comes and picks up these discs from us and takes them away, and then he turns around and reuses them and resells them. I'm like, well, what the heck is this guy doing? And he said he takes the discs, and they go back and they heat them up again and melt them, and they mold them into the form of blocks, and they were building homes with them in South Korea and parts of Africa. And the styrofoam melted down and repurposed was stronger than a cinder block is. So if you look at all of this stuff that we have out there right now, I mean, I think just even identifying ways to improve the quality of materials with which we're building, and don't even get me started on the building a house with a 3D printer thing, because I've had a couple of opportunities to look at pitch decks from companies and make investments in companies that are using this technology right now. And it's really crazy. Number one, how strong it is. Number two, how fast it is. Like, you're going to get to the point where you can build a house from beginning to end in like a week or less in the very near future, I have a feeling. So, even looking at worst case scenario, and I'm thinking out loud here, but when you think about replacement cost and all of that on our homes, and then what some of the options are that you can rebuild with, you actually may be able to rebuild at a lower cost in the future and build a stronger home as a result by doing some of this stuff that's just now starting to break into the marketplace.
Well, even just from the standpoint of, like, if it's only taking whatever half the time, that obviously is going to lower the cost there, with all the cost of construction and paying contractors and everything alone. Not to mention the strength of the products and what that'll look like, especially if it's all recycled. It's got to be less expensive.
Yeah. We're starting to see more companies kind of experimenting, and I always have to think about, we thought a ton about the idea of just like going into construction and helping out with the almost like building code aspect of making properties more survivable. And I think that is necessary. And then I think about the millions of properties that are currently in the US that aren't built that way. So I think it'll be interesting to see, after a disaster happens, how many people rebuild with better materials. And that's starting to be a conversation more in the insurance industry. But yeah, there's just a ton of innovation that I think has been accelerated, especially since like this year we started off with I think it's the most costly and devastating wildfire in history. So there's lots of conversation around how we just rebuild and make this smoother.
Is there anything we haven't hit on that you want people to know about Fora as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, I feel like we could, to her point, we could probably talk about this for days, but I want to make sure we get everything in that Valkyrie wants to cover before we wrap up.
Yeah, no, I mean, we typically, give reports to people based off of the address. So you can go to our website, it's faura.us, and kind of sign up on the platform. You get access to all of our tools, whether you want to do a digital inspection of a property or just request it for our address, or maybe you have property elements that you already, have inputted on a property that you can use. Either way, the biggest thing for us is just giving people more access to our platform. So feel free to head there. And yeah, that's kind of the last thing on my end.
Cool.
How do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can reach out to me. Typically, LinkedIn, honestly, is the best way.
I just sent you a connection request without a note. I figured after we
Hey,
talked
that's
for an hour, I
perfect.
didn't need to add one.
Yeah, we got the notes.
Hey, it's
We
me,
got the notes
David.
here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I already put
Yeah.
a picture of you up. And I sent Brendan a text telling him you were crushing it on the podcast. So
Great. I'm glad. I'm glad. No, this is fun. And I like talking about just, I'm definitely not the most fun person at the Thanksgiving table when I bring up that I'm working in insurance now, but but you guys get it. So yeah,
yeah,
it's fun.
100%. No, I think it's been great conversation. I'm honestly very intrigued with what you're doing and will be a huge follower to see where this thing goes because I do think it's needed. I think messaging is really important. You're going to have, a messaging dilemma. I don't know if a dilemma is a good word, but you're going to have a messaging situation with agents
Yeah.
to make sure they understand, what it is you're doing, how you're helping them, how they can engage and all of that stuff. But you're also very early in the game on this, and it's going to be really interesting to see where things go as AI continues to develop and other technologies develop, where we're going to be able to see this stuff end up manifesting itself. So we appreciate you jumping on with us today, and I think that's all
Yeah.
I got. Yeah, no, it's going to be a really good one when it comes out. So
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, and it's good to meet you guys. I don't know when the next kind of event either me or Brendan will be at. I think we're gonna go to this oh, I'm forgetting right now. I'll let you know. We'll meet up at some
I
point.
would imagine for sure you'll be at ITC in Vegas, right? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be at ITC.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did you do InsurTech Insights?
Yeah, yeah. I'm based here in New York City, so it was pretty easy for me to just hop on
Yeah, I
down to the
figured.
Java Center. Yeah, and SureTech Insights is always good. We actually won the State Farm pitch competition last year at ITC.
Oh,
So now
nice.
we're coming back. And hopefully we'll be doing a couple panels and moderating some
Do you
things.
know
So
Clinton Houck at State Farm?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, good deal.
Cool.
Another Houck. I got
I'm
so many
just gonna
Houcks
say,
in my
what's
life,
going on
man.
here?
Yeah.
I've got Kyle, I've got Clinton, I've got Cody, and they all have the hard C or K at the beginning of their name too, in the beginning of their first name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What are the
interesting.
odds?
Yeah, no chance. And Cody Houck is different. He's just
Spelt,
Houk.
yeah. So the other guys is spelled like mine. That's you don't see that often. A lot of times I see Hau, but
Oh
Mm,
yeah, the
yeah.
lesser talked about Houck spelling.
yeah, for sure.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Valkyrie, we got another one we got to do. We're gonna let you run. Thanks for spending an hour with us, and look
Yeah.
forward to watching you just continue to crush this thing.
Yeah, no, really good to meet you guys, and I hope you have a good weekend.
Awesome.
Cool, you
See
too.
you.